Most of the papers today are actually, OTBsports.com, where Sean Boylan's Me, the Dirty Team. It's a Sunday paper review, and it's a question we'll come back to in just a moment. Tommy Rooney wading into this debate on Twitter last night. Keith Quinn and Andrew Noonan appear in court over heroin seizure. Phil Mickelson gets Nick Faldo hook, line and sinker with dad joke. That's from the golf of the weekend. And of course, Atletico Madrid have confirmed 2 positive tests ahead of Champions League. We've just heard Graham Hunter speculate that it is on the playing staff. So I'll run you through the rest of the sports pages here very quickly. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer praising Martial for turning into powerhouse. This is the preview of tonight's game against FC Copenhagen in the Europa League. That game is on in Cologne. Inter versus Bayern is on in Dusseldorf. Inter versus Bayer Leverkusen is on in Dusseldorf. Tomorrow it's Shakhtar Donetsk and Basel, and Wolves and Sevilla, and then we kick into Champions League action as well. So that is that. There's a lot of stuff from the press conference yesterday that Solskjaer gave, which is talking about the back page of the Mail launching pad. Europa win will kickstart more success. And then there is all the speculation about the end of era for David De Gea, because he refused to back him. Is this the last stop? It's de as in De Gea, because Solskjaer said, we have 3 keepers, including Henderson, and I can't keep them all. So there it is, Man United versus Copenhagen. I can't keep all 3 keepers. Excess baggage. Picture of David De Gea in a mask coming off the plane yesterday. Face off, tab of the morning to you, because, you know, didn't face off happen on a plane? Wasn't a lot of face off actually? Am I getting this wrong? Am I mixing up Con Air and face off phone?
You might be. It's one pretty average 1980s action film versus another. They all kind of blend into one for me.
It's the 1990s zone. They're both in the 1990s.
It's 1980s as far as I'm concerned. But wow, 97.
Yeah, oh my God, what are you talking
late 90s.
It's not even close. Not even close.
Wow.
Also, sorry, what did you say? Mediocre?
Yeah.
All-time classics. Both of them all-time classics.
I mean, anything with Nicolas Cage automatically is can't go down as an all-time classic as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Oh, I'm finished. You can take over.
Nicolas Cage is
I'm on strike.
Is an immediate lead balloon for me.
What?
Like, I mean, he's become a parody.
You got no class. That's all I'm going to say about this. You got no class. I'm going to inflict for homework. We're going to start watching some Nick Cage movies, and we're going to give player ratings on them over the next couple of weeks. And you are going to change your tune.
I'm not sure I will, to be quite honest with you.
Yes, you will. You can't. No way.
I'll give you this. Maybe 97 is still when Nicolas Cage is a passable Hollywood presence. But
oh my God, this is. I had no idea that you were just so wrong about so many things. How can I trust your opinion on anything now, Owen? How can I trust your opinion on anything?
Nicolas Cage is a meme first, an actor second.
The Examiner this morning, masking kit. They've got a good story we'll get to in a moment. Could mask wearing help increase GAA attendance cap? And then the UK papers are all fairly similar. Stokes misses series to see ill father, and it's pictures from Lewis Hamilton happy after Verstappen victory. Solskjaer refuses to give De Gea's backing is the back page story on the Irish Independent, and there's a picture too of Aidan O'Shea celebrating with his brother Conor after Bravy's narrow win over Castlebar Mitchells yesterday in the Mayo Senior Football Championship clash, which keeps their hopes alive. So that is essentially what the leads are in most of the papers today. And where are we starting?
We may as well start with that story you mentioned there in the Irish Examiner, John Fogarty in conversation with Mary Horgan. And the idea of masks has been brought up. If you want to actually try and bring the numbers forward, bring the numbers up at GAA grounds, would mask wearing make that a more possible eventuality? And she certainly is suggesting that might be the case. So John Fogarty asks if she was surprised that players, management and games officials were all included in the 200 people at the attendance cap. And she says, I was surprised because you would be presuming most of them would be on the pitch and the backroom staff on the sideline. I would hope that given it's an outdoor sport, and I presume everybody will end up wearing masks and use all the hygiene facilities, that might help putting a strong case forward to expand the number of spectators to 500. So not saying it in black and white terms, but certainly strongly suggesting this morning that to get to 500, everybody needs to be wearing masks at stadiums, which makes sense.
It's really interesting that this conversation is still happening at the moment, and obviously it needs to happen, and the scientists need to be brought to the fore to say this is what's going to happen, this is why it's happening, and this is why it can or can't happen, and that's the decision-making process. While at the same time, 3 counties have had their ability to have any games completely wiped out. And I wonder, is there a possibility that we tilt back into a situation or a scenario where those 3 counties become 10 counties, and what impact that might have on a potential inter-county season down the line as well? So if all these debates ultimately end up being completely moot because we reach a point where club championships continue and they're over by the end of August, early September, and nothing happens after that because we're in a scenario where teams are suddenly not allowed to play matches. It just, these parallel conversations need to happen, but you really hope that last week's lockdown, gets a grip on the situation, and that's the last time that we see any of these local lockdowns, or that the science emerges and says, actually, you didn't need to do that. It had no impact on community transmission. What you needed to do was get in there to the meat factories and close them down and make sure that the working conditions were improved in the meat factories.
But the unfortunate thing now is that the goalposts have shifted a little bit, where a week ago we were saying, how can we get more and more supporters to watch these games happen? Whereas now it feels after Friday afternoon, we're having a conversation about how do we ensure that these games happen. The spectators thing, I feel, is going to fade into the background. It potentially has already faded to the background, because we now know that if there are localised lockdowns, the GAA, sport at large, will probably not happen. It isn't the same as the Premier League, where these are professional athletes.
Well, they have been given the go-ahead. So the phraseology, the official phraseology from the department guidelines were suitably vague. Elite sport can continue, inter-county training can continue, was the exact wording of it. So, I mean, you would say that you could make an argument, given that they are part of the government grant scheme, that they're considered elite, and so therefore inter-county sport will be able to continue. Say, for example, this lockdown happened, these 3 counties were in lockdown and the Leinster Championship was going ahead. There would be a strong argument that those games could go ahead behind closed doors if they were involved in games.
My issue with that would be the elite sports people, the inter-county footballers or hurlers would be able to go and play a match on a Friday, but if their county's in lockdown, they won't be able to go to work on the Friday morning.
You can go to work.
The lockdown restrictions won't allow them to do certain things within their own county.
Yeah.
Sorry, go to work, of course. Sorry, that is one of the things that you're allowed to do. But certain aspects of your life, your day-to-day life, maybe some aspects of your work will be affected by this. I just find it interesting that you will be able to go and actually play sport while also operating in your own job, being a regular part of the community. And that is the difference here between the professional and the non-professional. And I know that it is down as elite, which will allow inter-county games and training to go ahead. I would still have concerns about whether or not the championship is going to happen this year, basically.
So the exact wording was, no sporting events or matches should take place with the following exemptions. Non-contact training outdoors in a maximum group of 15 people may continue. Professional and elite sports and horse racing may continue behind closed doors. So that means rugby, that means League of Ireland, and elite sports, you would assume, means inter-county. I mean, it's not written down, but it does say inter-county training, max 15 people, and fixtures may continue behind closed doors. So they've got this wording ready for a time down the line when a county goes into lockdown. That county is due to play a match that weekend. Certainly from talking to people who are in those counties, they don't feel like they have been in any way more lax than people in other counties. There is a lot of anger towards the locus points of the outbreaks that is stopping some small businesses from opening, some people from going about their day-to-day lives. It's made more manifest by not being able to continue to open. If you're a restaurant, you can only do takeaway or delivery stuff. Whereas actually last week you were able to open, and then all of a sudden you can't. And amateur sport is locked down, so no local football, no local GAA, no local rugby. There seems to be some early issues with understanding exactly what rules are going to have an impact and what rules aren't going to have an impact. And maybe these 3 counties end up being test cases, and in 2 weeks' time evidence emerges and they change the guidelines. Just haven't seen a lot of guidelines being changed recently or loosened up. So I think that the framework for an inter-county season to continue is there. It's whether or not counties will then feel like it's the right thing for us to do, given that there is a lockdown, to send our team in a bus from Kildare to Croke Park. And what if Dublin ends up being the county that gets locked down? Do counties feel comfortable sending their teams to Croke Park to play, or do you move the games then out of Croke Park to Thurles or Cork, or what happens? Like,
that's going to be one of the significant questions. Like, the reality is, of course, these localised lockdowns are test cases. Surely, in any society, the first thing that you do should be something that you learn from. And like, that's not to say that this is like some sort of weird social experiment or anything like that. It's just the way things work. And we will definitely have to find a way where we can live with this thing. The point of actually imposing lockdowns in order to crush coronavirus is never going to happen. It is about how do we figure out a way that we can actually operate and live our lives in a way while this thing also exists out there. And if there is a happy medium where it is just inter-county players, or maybe you can get it down to club level within the GAA, where those games can at least happen and there isn't a spike in community transmission, then we should absolutely be proceeding with that, or at least we should be looking into how that works. And if the first step in that is ensuring that there's no amateur games at the start, and then perhaps bringing in some amateur games during a localised lockdown, maybe that's the way through this. There's going to have to be some little element of risk, as we've always been told, if we want to make steps forward.
Okay, let's move on. What's next?
Next up in the papers this morning, let's go to the FAI. This is a story that's been covered extensively over the last little while. I suppose the last time we were on air was Friday morning. We had Niall Quinn on the show before the FAI council meeting at the Red Cow Hotel that night. And the whole idea of unity was something that was peddled quite a bit throughout last week. And it flew in the face of what we were actually seeing from the top rank of the FAI, where there was anything but unity. We had renegade directors issuing a statement last week, but everybody seemed to fall in line on Friday night. It seemed like you had 11 of the 12 directors showing up, and when asked from the floor to raise their hands if they considered the board to be unified, all 11 of those did so. So a united front was definitely shown on Friday night. What actually went on in the throughout that board meeting, we obviously, throughout the council meeting, we won't know for sure, considering some compromises may have had to be made. Like, you listen to some of the quotes, like Jerry McEnany was quite interesting. He said that the issue's been put to bed, apologies have been made, and as far as we are concerned, the matter is closed, which is quite a departure from the statement on which he was a signatory 48 hours before that moment. So it must have been quite a progressive meeting. Like, you've had a few dissenting voices over the last few days as well. You had Mick Wallace coming out saying what Roy Barrett argued was that this is a point the government insisted on. I find that a bit rich, given the government's struggle to run a piss-up-in-it brewery and other experts in how a football organisation should run. He says this is the same government that bailed out useless, broke banks for billions, and they're prepared to let the FAI go insolvent for a couple of million. They're going to lose $1 billion on the Children's Hospital. The idea they'd let the FAI go insolvent because we wouldn't agree to 6/6, I don't think they'd allow it to go insolvent. So there's probably plenty more to be said about this. It is just interesting that they've managed to get people all on the same page very, very quickly last week.
Yeah, and they still need 2/3 of the majority to make it pass at the EGM, which is going to happen at the end of this month. There is potential for some legal shenanigans to happen in the meantime, with a fairly suddenly high-profile executive council member threatening legal action if an AGM doesn't happen before that. So that story that we all love, Irish Sports Administration wrangling with itself like a cat ranch, is something that we all have a couple of weeks to look forward to. So I certainly am not going to tune out from that, because I think there's still some pretty interesting stuff to happen over the next couple of weeks. Where are we going last?
Has it gone up a notch in the sex appeal?
I thought it was all. I thought like it is literally the future of the biggest sport on the island at stake. Like, it will collapse in on itself. There will be a black hole for Irish football for a couple of decades, potentially, if we're not careful here. And like the green shoots are really evident. You can see the young players starting to come through, and they're coming through with a style of play and a self-confidence on the ball that in numbers that would give you really hope that we might actually be about to produce a period of Ireland being decent again at international level at senior team, you know, that didn't come from nothing. But it will absolutely all be for nothing if the FAI ends up going bust, because and also actually the organisation will massively benefit from having independent voices at board level who are saying, have you thought about this? Well, you know, in my experience, I've learned these things. Perhaps some of that experience is actually going to be useful to this organisation. Some of it won't be, but the bits that are, take them. Like, that's how a good board should function.
Do we know who, where the votes go actually come the voting this year? Like, do we know who is going to vote against the MOU, I wonder, later this year? Because if it doesn't pass, there will obviously be questions to be asked of those people who showed up and said, actually, no, we're willing to see this organisation go under. Like that would be the thing I'd be interested in.
Well, I think it's a show of hands as opposed to anonymous. I'm not sure we can find that out, but certainly what actually happens on the day itself, you will know. People will stand up and say, I'm making the case for or against.
Yeah. So like there will be like an element of public shame attached to it, because like whether you argue for or against it, I still think that the specific sticking points are quite specific and certainly not worth the price. The stakes on the line here, the very existence of the organisation. So it's like this month. I mean, if you are hooked onto the FAI soap opera, then there's plenty more coming your way later on this month. One last story this morning, just a quick one. Draymond Green. Like, this is how you do analysis. If you've got brought in as a player who wasn't part of a team involved, so you know a broadcaster brings you back, you've got to have a game, you've got to have an angle. And Draymond Green,
explain who he is.
Busy bidding. He is the Golden State Warriors shithouse. The guy who will make your life a misery, an outstanding defensive player. The Golden State Warriors. Of course, Golden State aren't in this year's playoffs, so he was back on TNT last week doing a bit of analysis, watching Phoenix Suns play, watching Devin Booker, one of the best young players in the league, play, and he praised him for his play and said, but get my man out of Phoenix. It's not good for him. It's not good for his career. They got to get Book out of Phoenix. I need my man to go somewhere where he can play great basketball all the time and win, because he's that type of player. And now a few alarm bells started ringing in the TNT production box, and Ernie Johnson, the presenter, had to press him on this. And he asked him if he thought his comments involved tampering, which of course he can't do in the NBA. And Green responded, maybe, not really veiling his attempt to lure Booker to Golden State whatsoever. And he ended up getting himself a 50k fine.
50 grand.
I wonder what his fee was to show up to
not
TNT.
50 grand, surely.
Probably not 50 grand. But he's got himself that fine. Now, in fairness, if it does help the team get Devin Booker, then it will be worthwhile. For anybody who wants to see him, he'll be playing at 7:30 Irish time tonight. The Phoenix Suns are up against the Oklahoma City Thunder in an early game, and he is absolutely worth every minute you can spend watching him. He scored 70 points against Celtics in a game a few years ago. He's been brilliant since the restart. Scored a buzzer beater in a game a few days ago, and the team have gone 5-0 since the restart as well. So the Suns have been on form and look like they might be in with a shout of getting a playoff spot. So yeah, I guess Draymond Green, a bit of a loser, but to get Booker, he'll be a massive winner.
Maybe TNT step in and pay it. And actually, now that I think about it, maybe he is getting 50 grand. It's like one of the most watched things in the world at the moment, because there's nothing else on in America, and so therefore they probably can throw a lot of cash at people. And I presume, you know, his level of superstardom is big enough that he'd be like, I'm getting out of bed for 100 grand here, folks. Like it or lump it. Are we at that level?
Well, possibly, probably for maybe a more prolonged attachment to TNT as well. Like, he is a very divisive character, but like he's somebody you would certainly listen to. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the fee, but he'll have to give it all back if that is what he's getting. So, like, as soon as I saw this, I didn't see this happen live. I did think to myself, oh, I need to see more of Draymond on CoCom or on analysis here, and like, I mean, that's why you pay him the big bucks.
It worked out. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's a quick look at what's on the OTB Sports app for you right now, which you can download and you can use if you already have downloaded it to get our feed, which is all the stories that you select from all the various sports that you're interested in. You get to personalise that. We have our full 24-hour radio station, OTB Sports Radio, right there, which has all of our live shows and all of our best archive material live in a continuous stream. So if you're at a loose end even, and you want some top quality sports audio, and there's no podcasts that you are currently tuned into that have dropped just recently, then click on the radio and we will curate our best stuff for you. All our video output is right there, but you know that you never run out of our podcasts, right? Because we have about 40 of them, and the best place to listen to those is actually on the OTB Sports app. Just hit subscribe and away you go. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 087 9 180 180 is the number. We're going to take a quick break, but plenty to come over the next hour. Joe Malloy is going to join us to talk about the birth of a new phenom in golf. Overnight, we've got Deal or No Deal with Phil Egan, and up next, our Gillette pressure rankings. We're going to be back after these.